Chapter 1. Managing Revenue to Maximize Practice Profit by Judy Capco with Lori Morgan. Key insight: getting paid more for what you do depends on numerous decisions, requires diligence by everyone in the practice, and begins before the patient is seen. Revenue management is a multifaceted process, and, as with every area of practice performance, the greater the commitment, the greater the result. With the payoff from attention to revenue can be enormous for your practice. Improving your ability to earn and capture revenue pays off again and again. To do it well, though, takes an organized, detail-oriented approach that starts before the patient selects you as their physician and ends with the final payment, known as the revenue cycle. This process offers opportunities for savvy practices to protect their revenue at every stage. But if you're not paying close attention, these same stages are opportunities for revenue to slip silently through the cracks. Getting paid for what they do remains one of the biggest concerns for physicians and administrators across the country. It is a concern for academic practices, group practices both small and large, solo physicians, even hospital-owned practices. There's no one big secret, but there are many little secrets and actions that are worthy of administrator and physician attention to improve revenue performance. Capturing charges and maximizing their value. When we ask physicians to describe the process of capturing charges, they often say it's mainly a matter of documenting all the services they perform, usually in the EHR, so that they can be transferred into the billing system. Not every practice is using an integrated system, and some practices are still using paper records. But regardless of their technology setup, most physicians think of charge capture primarily as a part of their documentation process. Of course, documentation is essential to capturing charges, but other factors play an important role in maximizing them. The process begins long before services are provided, with contracting issues. Capco and Morgan has worked with private practice physicians that do their own contracting, and some that delegate some or all of this responsibility to managed care organizations, MCOs, through a centralized management service organization, MSO, or independent provider association, IPA. Recently, some physicians have also felt pressure to join up with supergroups to build a bigger footprint, hoping to gain more negotiating leverage in the process. These structures may have their own MSO, outsourced to a service, or have physician managers at the top of the pyramid who take responsibility for negotiating for all members. Physicians who decide to rely on others to handle their contracting sometimes do so because they believe they'll be less adept at negotiating. Others fear that if they don't team up with other physicians or with professional managers, they could be left out in the cold and be unable to contract with certain plans. But despite everyone's intentions, the appointed negotiators may or may not be more effective at representing physicians and obtaining favorable fee schedules or payment terms. Furthermore, they sometimes work on their own with little input from their internal customers, often even failing to provide member practices and physicians with copies of the contracts and associated fee schedules. Even when others do the negotiating, it's the practice's responsibility to evaluate and monitor the performance of the third-party payers and hold them to the terms of the contract, and to monitor the practice's conformance to the terms, too. So if you are working with others to handle these negotiations for you, it's still essential that you receive documentation and fee schedules for each contract. It's unfortunately not uncommon to encounter a practice that either does not have copies of contracts and related fee schedules or has them but does not know where they are. Sometimes, contracts are stored somewhere for years, automatically rolling over, causing the practice to miss out on fee schedule improvements they'd only have needed to ask for. In other cases, practices have become part of large groups or work with management organizations that seem intent on deliberately withholding the contracts from the physicians. How can these practices be sure they are getting paid correctly and that the terms of the contract are not being violated? Physicians and staff cannot enforce the contract and have no means to hold the payer accountable unless they have a copy of the contract and its supporting documents. Moreover, it's also important to take a critical look at the insurance companies you contract with or intend to contract with in the future. Your existing payers should be evaluated each time your contract renews. And just because a new payer arrives on the scene, that doesn't mean you need to jump on board and obtain a contract. Look at the potential impact before you sign on. Does this insurance company or MCO have a contract with an important employer in town? Will further physician referrals be jeopardized if you don't sign on? What are the implications to the practice and your existing patients if you do or don't sign on? Even when you're part of an umbrella organization, be sure you're aware of what is being contemplated and how it impacts your own practice. In the current environment, it may seem like there's no possibility of negotiation with powerful payers, but it's critical not to simply give up control. Scrutinize every contract you are considering. Don't let the emotions of the situation get the best of you, even if the insurance company appears to be a major player in town. The goal in working with insurance payers is to develop a good relationship and contracts that are acceptable with terms that do not compromise either the practice or its patients. A posture of relationship building is an investment in your future ability to negotiate. Sometimes, we work with new practices that want to negotiate specific terms right out of the gate. When practices are new to the market, their lack of a track record can be an impediment to negotiating, at least in the first year or two. As your relationship with the payer builds, your team can learn more about what the payer values and use that knowledge to build a strategy for negotiating. Your reputation, yes, including ratings from patients, can be an important differentiator in your favor. Of course, if you're in a specialty that is underrepresented in your market, that will give you some leverage, too. Another point in your favor will be flexibility. Are you interested in trying out a new payment model? You could benefit if a payer you work with is also interested. Your chosen facilities are another potential negotiating advantage. Keep in mind that health plans are primarily concerned with controlling costs, and, for procedures, the biggest portion of expenses will be incurred at the hospital. Are you currently on staff at a hospital that offers a more attractive business proposition to one of your contracted health plans? Or are you willing to be? If it allows a health plan to save much more on hospital costs, an increase in your reimbursement for procedures performed there is an excellent investment for them. And don't forget, in our world of increasing deductibles, using a less costly hospital could even mean savings for patients who are on that plan as well. If you're in an area where many of your competitors have been acquired by hospitals or larger practice organizations, you may assume this puts you in a weaker negotiating position. But the opposite might be true, especially if the hospital has already pressed the payer to a much higher fee schedule. Your practice may be able to negotiate a large bump, yet still offer the payer a much better deal than the behemoth down the street. Don't give up on the idea of finding a negotiation strategy without first learning more about what payers are concerned about. It's worth noting that building relationships and learning about the negotiating priorities of your key payers is yet another way that investing in and properly motivating and working with a knowledgeable and motivated practice manager/administrator can contribute to your financial success. Even small improvements to contracted rates pay off every time you build those codes to that payer. A savvy management professional can build the right relationships to understand the nuances of your payer relationships and do the analysis needed to make your case. This is yet another example of how saving money by aiming low and choosing and compensating the management professional who oversees your practice business can be penny wise and pound foolish. You or your administrator also need to scrutinize the details of contracts and do the math. Contracted rates are often expressed in relative values, such as 102% of Medicare rate. But which Medicare rate? Which fee schedule year? Which geography? Etc. Terms like these are often gotchas, especially if a contract auto-renews, but you can often change costly specific terms, even with tough payers, by insisting on clarifying language. For example, the most current Medicare fee schedule for your specific locality. Make sure you know what you actually get paid. If a fee schedule is presented in percentage terms, calculate what you actually get before deciding it's acceptable. Is it a raise or a reduction over your current fee schedule? Be sure you know the answer, code by code, and focus on the codes most important to your practice. Keep in mind, also, that many contracts today have different fee schedules for different networks. Plans are aiming to segment their membership based on the premiums they are paying. Do the math for every network fee schedule presented, and consider not just the rates that are on offer, but the number of patients you have who are part of that structure. A small decrease over a large portion of your population may have a much bigger impact on your practice revenue than a larger increase over a very small portion of your patient population. It bears repeating. Do the math. All the math. Don't assume that you are locked into the terms of some boilerplate contract that's being passed around to all the doctors in town. Boilerplate terms are set for the plan's best interests, and often express terms the payer doesn't expect you to agree to without question. Learn to say no to, or demand revision of, terms that aren't acceptable. For example, a contract may require a physician to submit claims within 60 days of service, but may not specify a time limit on when the payer actually pays the physician. Why would a physician agree to those terms? Of course, there is some protection if your state has legislation that requires the insurance plan to pay clean claims within a certain number of days. Check with your state's prompt payment laws before you agree to a contract that does not specify payment terms. Watch, also, for any terms that specify exceptional ways the payer can reimburse you. In recent years, more plans have attempted to use prepaid credit cards instead of checks to pay practices. But these cards often carry fees when used, which constitutes a deduction in your reimbursement. All health plans are now required to offer electronic funds transfer (EFT) reimbursement, thanks to recent changes to HIPAA. This is the best way to ensure you're reimbursed promptly and don't incur costs processing your own money. Make sure that EFT is the default method of payment, not another method that benefits the payer and passes costs on to your practice. Keep in mind that the relevant documents mentioned in the contract, not just the contract itself, should be examined. Items and addenda may add to the cost of doing business with a payer, and that added cost must be weighed against the revenue upside. For example, physicians need a clear understanding of the grievance process from the start, not once a problem emerges. Review the plan's quality assurance and utilization management procedures. Find out what the plan expects from the practice and what the practice will be agreeing to once the contract is finalized. What are the call coverage requirements? Pre-authorization requirements under many plans have grown more burdensome in recent years, especially for narrow network and bare bones ACA Affordable Care Act exchange plans. Be sure to factor the cost of managing these requirements into your evaluation of a proposed contract. Know your state laws, too. For example, is electronic pre-authorization mandatory in your state, and are your payers compliant? Also, get a clear understanding of the medical liability the practice will own under the contract. Does it include a hold harmless clause to protect the physicians and the practice? It's wise to have the contract reviewed by your malpractice carrier and / or lawyer in advance. Keep in mind, though, that legal review is not the same as a business review of terms. If you or your manager / administrator are unsure about reviewing contract terms, turn to business professionals, professional consultants. Medical Group Management Association (MGMA) and state medical associations and specialty societies have tools to help medical practices examine and understand an insurance contract and its implications. Keep staff informed. Once the contract has been signed, someone in the office must assume responsibility for educating the staff about the essentials. Make sure you have the answers to these questions before patients arrive in the office. 1. Are all the physicians / providers in the practice contracted with the plan? 2. What are the data collection requirements? 3. What services, including studies, devices, and prescriptions, require prior authorization? What is the process for prior authorization? 4. Can verification, eligibility, pre-authorization, and the referral process be handled online, ideally in real time and within the practice management system PMS? 5. What are the patient's responsibilities, and if the patient fails to meet these responsibilities, what action is the practice permitted to take? 6. What services are not covered by the contract? 7. What payments can or must be collected up front? 8. What are the billing requirements, including timely filing limits? Is there anything exceptional about how claims must be submitted? 9. Who is the plan's provider relations contact for the office, and what is that person's direct phone number? 10. What happens if the plan becomes insolvent? 11. What is the fee schedule? Too often, staff members don't even have a copy of the fee schedule for the plan. But to ensure your practice is paid properly, staff members or your billing service not only need a copy of the fee schedule, someone needs to enter it into your PMS so that errors of reimbursement versus contracted fees can be easily spotted. If your billing department assumes the practice is being paid correctly and posts the payment and adjustment accordingly, you may be passively accepting underpayments. Once you've accepted payment, adjusting the amounts upward would likely be impossible. This can cost the practice many thousands of dollars each month. We've seen it happen all too often. Remember, a well-informed staff guards the practice's financial interests. Patient registration. There's power in the patient registration process. Respect it. The patient registration form is the patient's first financial document in the practice and is vital for making sure the practice gets paid. The form must be user-friendly. Use words patients will recognize. If patients are complaining about completing or updating the form and ask questions that suggest the form is confusing, redesign it. Make sure the form is system-friendly. 2. Make the registration form and other paperwork the patient will have to complete before the visit available via your website. And be sure your scheduling team is trained to help people find it. Excellent technologies now exist to streamline the registration, including kiosks and tablets that allow patients to enter information directly into your PMS. This reduces errors in staff workload and even increases patient privacy. Explore whether one of these solutions could work for your practice. Also look into whether your patients can use your payment portal or EHR portal to submit some or all of their registration information before their visit. This is more convenient and efficient for you and your staff, and your patients will find it easier and more private. Educate, enforce, and reinforce the importance of patient registration. This means holding staff and patients accountable. The staff must take responsibility for obtaining accurate patient registration information at each visit. Patients must do their part by providing you with the information. There are important questions to ask established patients at each visit and when scheduling by phone. Keeping patient registration information current depends on how these questions are asked. There's a right way and a wrong way. Table 1. Table 1. Right and wrong ways to ask for patient information. Information needed. Current phone number, current address, employer, health plan, injury claims. Right way to ask. Please confirm your home and work phone numbers for me. Are you still living at 312 Windy Drive? Are you still employed by the City of New York? Is Aetna Preferred still your primary insurance? Do you still have secondary insurance coverage with United Healthcare? Is this visit due to a workers' compensation claim or auto injury? Wrong way to ask. Are your phone numbers the same? Is your address the same? Have you changed jobs? Do you still have the same primary and secondary insurance? Not asking about the possibility of injury. Remember that these questions protect your practice from delays or denials of payment from health plans, and they help protect patients against medical identity theft to a fast-growing white-collar crime. Staff should also always ask for an updated copy of the patient's insurance card and scan it at check-in. If you don't have one, purchase a card scanner to scan patients' insurance cards. These amazing little tools are inexpensive and save paper. More important, they populate the fields of your patient PMS records, so the information is automatically entered accurately and is in the proper place for including in claims. Charge reporting. Most practices that have implemented EHRs have been able to do away with a charge ticket. A primary step is shredding the paper monster, reducing errors from duplicate work, and obtaining provider commitment to document in real time during the patient visit. For those holdouts still not using EHRs, the encounter form charge ticket should be reviewed annually and scrutinized for potential change. Are all the codes updated to comply with the latest versions of both CPT and ICD-10? Does it make sense? And is it functional? Does it simplify documenting the visit, data entry, scheduling follow-up care, and collecting payment? Here are a few suggestions for designing a functional form. Make sure patient demographics and insurance information appear at the top of the form. List only the top office CPT codes based on actual utilization. Utilization data can be pulled from the PMS for the past 12 months to guide this process. Omit hospital services from the office charge ticket. Leave a space for staff instructions, i.e., what diagnostic studies need to be scheduled and when the patient needs to return to the office. Designate an area to document the payment received and the balance on the account. When reporting hospital charges, many physicians fall short by not completing the charge document immediately after the visit. This can be a major contributor to inaccurate coding, lost charges, duplication of effort, staff inefficiency, and delayed billing. One of our past clients failed to charge for 15% of his hospital procedures, a total of more than $100,000 a year, because the physicians were not promptly documenting these charges. The potential for this to occur is greatly reduced with implementation of an EHR system, especially one that is integrated with a PMS that allows physicians to access patient charts off-site and record services rendered from a laptop or handheld device. Accurate and timely charge submission is the responsibility of the person performing the service. Providers should not be delegating this function to someone else in the office, whether it is done with paper and pen or an EHR. If you are considering a new EHR system, be sure to include integration with your PMS or a new PMS you can switch to as part of the evaluation process. Few decisions have a more significant impact on your ability to process claims quickly and accurately than linking these two systems so that coding is input only once by the physician who provided the services. Coding accuracy. Many practices can benefit from having a coding expert on staff or otherwise regularly available for advice, preferably a certified professional coder (CPC). The coding expert examines charge activity to be sure visits are coded properly, both ICD and CPT, including modifiers. If you decide to outsource your billing to a revenue cycle management RCM service, the availability of a CPC on staff may be a selling point that can help you choose among your options. Empower your coder to assume responsibility for educating physicians and staff. When finding inaccurate or incomplete charge documentation, the coder can use these examples to conduct a coding review for physicians and staff so the coding errors are not repeated. Smaller practices may find that regular access to a coder for everyday help is not necessary or practical, especially if a small range of codes are used. But every practice can benefit from a periodic coding review and audit. The evaluation and management E and M code range, in particular, should be analyzed. Over time, physicians and non-physician providers may find that their coding habits drift toward coding somewhat higher or somewhat lower for the same services. A review may reveal that the physicians on your team have quite different ideas of, say, what justifies a level 4 visit. A coding expert can provide refresher training to everyone in the practice to be sure you're all on the same page and coding within normal ranges. Revenue recovery. Once the practice has taken the appropriate steps in capturing and reporting charges, the revenue recovery process begins, and the actions taken can either improve or impede cash flow. If claims are accurate with timely submission, It will result in improved cash flow, which is accelerated even more with payment by EFT. Incomplete claims or inaccurate payments result in duplication of effort, inefficiency, slower payment, and even lower payments. This increases practice expenses at the same time revenue is being delayed. Quality claim submission remains paramount to improve revenue recovery processes. Set revenue recovery standards in the office. Establish what you consider to be reasonable and acceptable. This makes it clear to staff what is expected. Provide the tools and support necessary to meet these guidelines and then hold staff accountable based on the standards. Here are some examples. Accurate claim submission. This can be measured by the number of claims that are rejected by your clearinghouse or insurance plans. Determine an acceptable error ratio, keeping the standard high, for example, less than 3% to 5%. If you're working with an integrated HR and PMS, and your staff is well trained, your clearinghouse submission error rate can approach 0%. Clearinghouse errors can be traced and used for staff education and accountability. For example, if the patient's date of birth or insurance plan numbers cannot be identified, an error has been made in collecting the data or entering it into the system. When patients check in, are staff members properly verifying name and address and confirming that coverage has not changed? Also establish a turnaround standard, such as a requirement that a rejected claim must be properly resubmitted as a clean claim within 24 to 48 hours and require that exceptions must be justified. Team guidelines for claim submission. Besides setting guidelines for the billing team for claim scrubbing, it's useful to have standards set for the entire team, billing physicians and non-physician providers, too, for the preparation and submission of claims. For example, for office visits, it's reasonable to have coding and chart notes signed off and ready to bill within 1 day of the service or at most 2 days. A standard like this holds accountable everyone in the practice who's involved with the preparation and submission of billing data. For surgery and other hospital services, your practice will need to customize standards, since factors such as which EHR your physicians are using and how data makes its way to your billers may affect timing. Sometimes, a physician in your practice may be the assisting physician for a surgical procedure when the primary surgeon is not in your practice, and that may dictate the timing of finalizing and submitting claims. To accommodate the specific charting and billing situations facing your practice, the administrator, the billing team, and physicians can work together to set reasonable but aggressive goals to be sure the standards enable the practice to bill promptly and reduce the possibility of unpaid claims. Timely claims payment. If claims are submitted accurately, in most cases, payment should be received within 30 days. Be sure all payers use EFT. Paperwork may be necessary to enroll, but this effort is well worth it. Beware of virtual credit card payments from health plans. These may carry additional fees that reduce your net payment and are cumbersome to use and therefore more costly than cash. Timely patient billing. Once a claim is paid by the insurance company and the required contract adjustment is made, the balance should be transferred to patient responsibility immediately. But be sure patients are prepared to pay a loan before the explanation of benefits EOB is received. Scheduling staff have the opportunity to explain payment responsibility and terms to patients when they book their appointments. Front desk staff should be trained to explain health plan payment terms and collect an appropriate portion of anticipated balances due for procedures at the time of service. Investigate credit card on file technology offered by your PMS vendor or a third-party solution so patients can set up secure, automated payment plans for larger amounts. A primary reason patients fail to pay their balances is that they don't understand them and find themselves surprised by medical bills. This is why educating patients and reinforcing health plan payment terms at scheduling and the front desk is so important. Generating statements promptly once balances are transferred to patient responsibility helps ensure patients don't have time to forget that they'd be billed. Rather than holding bills for one monthly batch, send bills for new patient balances each week. Avoiding a long lag between the patient's visit and billing is the surest way to encourage payment. Copies must be paid at the time of service, never bill. Keep in mind that preparing and sending a bill is costly for your practice, and when a copy amount is not collected at the time of service, the odds that it will never be paid increase dramatically. Billing copies instead of collecting them at the time of service, which is also often a requirement of your payer contracts, quickly becomes an unprofitable policy. Collect outstanding patient balances. When scheduling by phone, with a credit card, or via the payment portal, if and when the patient returns to the office, or within 30 days of the patient receiving a statement. For larger balances, develop payment plan standards that get you paid within 6 months. Email statements in a payer portal encourage patients to pay by making it much more convenient. Remember, practices that fail to establish clear revenue recovery standards not just for the billing team, but for reception, scheduling, and physicians and non-physician providers, too, are jeopardizing the ability to improve cash flow and optimize revenue. Monitoring performance. The power of revenue management includes monitoring internal and external performance. What physicians, managers, staff, patients, outsourced billing services, and insurance plans are doing that impact revenue and whether intervention is required. Conducting chart audits. One of the most effective ways to analyze performance with charge reporting and payer payments is the chart audit. Conducting audits is also a key component to an effective compliance program and to reducing the likelihood of a payer audit, or at least allowing the practice to better prepare for such an audit. Practices can implement their own procedures to accomplish this, but they will be most effective when these procedures involve both physicians and staff. If teams are formed with a receptionist or scheduler, nurse, physician, and someone from the billing department or service, the cross-representation and broader knowledge result in a better audit. It also serves as an educational process and provides greater understanding of everyone's contribution to revenue management. Your practice's coder or your compliance officer can serve as the project manager. Identify 5 to 10 random charts for each physician and non-physician provider to obtain a broad range of patient types, services, and payers. For each patient, select 1 day's encounter, going back at least 8 weeks prior to the date of the audit. For each selected encounter, you also need to review appointment record, chart documentation, chart notes for the visit, account itemization of charges, adjustments, and payments, explanation of benefits EOB. An integrated EHR and PMS can reduce the likelihood of troublesome inconsistencies between the chart and the billing records significantly. But if your systems are not yet integrated, it's important to carefully review and compare the demographic and appointment information from both the chart and the billing system, looking for any discrepancies. The documentation on the chart notes must validate the services appearing on the charge ticket, including date of service, diagnosis, and procedure codes for the visit and other ancillary services. Review the chart and verify that reports are in the file and that they have been read and signed off on by the physician. Integration also ensures that charges transfer over from the EHR to the PMS after the physician signs off on them, greatly reducing the chance of error due to re-entry of the information. But if you're not yet using an integrated approach, be sure the charges entered in the EHR match up with the billing system. If not, was a data entry problem to blame, or did the health plan downcode the claim? And if so, why? Was the problem something that can be corrected to avoid the same loss of revenue in the future? Reviewing the EOB will allow you to confirm that the insurance plan processed the claim and reimbursed for the services properly. Insurance companies make errors. Make it your responsibility to find them. Sometimes, a health plan may even set up your practice's contracted fee schedule incorrectly so a code is underpaid every time it's billed. Errors in paying and adjudicating claims can and should be caught by the billing department when posting the payment, but your audit will serve as a double check and reinforce accountability. Setting up each payer's contracted rates in the PMS and regularly reviewing reports that spotlight discrepancies is the best way to catch routine payer payment errors. If errors are detected during the audit, estimate the cost to the practice. If the audit reveals a potential gain of 12% on evaluation and management E&M services from systematic undercoding by providers, for example, calculate this against the revenue for those procedures over the past year. If E&M office codes represented $265,000 of last year's revenue, an additional 12% would be nearly $32,000. That's not small change. The first chart audit becomes the baseline for improving performance and educating both providers and staff. Periodic audits should be built into your system to measure progress and ensure compliance. If an internal audit uncovers substantial errors throughout the various departments, it may be best to bring in a coding and reimbursement specialist to train staff and implement effective revenue management policies and procedures. Don't be short-sighted by focusing on the cost to accomplish this. The investment can pay big dividends. Coding patterns. Examine and compare the E&M coding patterns of the physicians for both hospital and office visits. Compare this with the national utilization of E&M codes, usually available through the MGMA, the OP, or Medicare, which publishes E&M coding statistics by specialty. Comparing your physician team's utilization of E&M codes against both national averages and each other's utilization can help you identify discrepancies that could lead to unnecessarily decreased reimbursement, trigger a payer audit, or both figure 1, 90, 80, 70, 60, 50, 882,852,321, 40, 30, 20, 10, 0, 99,212, 99,213, 99,214, 99,215. 1 Dr. A, Dr. B, a Dr. C, Dr. D, national average. Figure 1, physician charge pattern analysis, E&M coding, internal medicine. At the same time, if one physician seems to be especially on the mark with proper coding, she can help other physicians extend their knowledge of coding application. A refresher review of proper E&M coding by a coding expert every few years is almost always a valuable investment for practices. Identifying the poor performing payer. The practice administrator takes the lead role in looking out for the practice's interests when dealing with insurance plans or MCOs. It's prudent to implement procedures to monitor payer performance and decide which insurance plans should be renewed, participation revised, or drop altogether. Maybe it's time to identify the bottom feeders and cancel those managed care contracts that are more trouble than they are worth. This strategy requires thorough analysis to identify which payers are the culprits that wreak havoc on the practice and whether it makes financial sense to eliminate them. Use the following as a guide. 1. Examine the hassle factor. The manager and insurance biller will need to examine key indicators and past performance patterns of third-party payers. A look at these 4 key indicators will identify the payers that present the biggest hassle. The plan requires many more requests for referral or authorization than other payers. Look for the payer's insurance plans or MCOs that physicians and staff struggle with or that require excessive time to deal with. Claims are processed slowly. If there are payers that repeatedly reject clean claims or ask for information that has already been provided or is not necessary to process the claim, put these payers on the hassle list. Patients complain about their insurance company. When patients come to a physician or staff member complaining about poor service from their insurance company, listen. This can be a sign of trouble. The payer may be cutting staff because it cannot meet its bottom line, or it may not have invested in the infrastructure required to support its members and maintain viability. Provider relations support is substandard. If staff members are frustrated with the lack of support they receive from provider relations or the inability to get their questions answered, the payer may be more trouble than it is worth. Rate each payer, giving it 1 point for each yes it receives on the above hassle factors. A 0 rating represents an excellent payer in terms of the hassle factor. 2. Review the outstanding claims reports. For several months in a row, generate and review the outstanding or unpaid claims report. This will identify the payers that account for the highest volume of outstanding claims and those that account for the largest amount of revenue due on outstanding claims. The top 5 may be the same or may be varied. If, for example, one payer appears each month, accounting for a high volume of claims but not a major amount of revenue, you may want to act on it. Canceling this contract may not have significant financial repercussions, but might save valuable staff time. However, before determining this, check out the referring source for these patients. If it turns out to be an important referring physician, discuss the situation with him or her before you act. Communicating upfront can reduce the chances of alienating referring physicians. You may also wish to evaluate whether you can negotiate an improvement of reimbursement rates for this payer. And what about the patient population? Are lower claims amounts due to having mostly younger patients from a single local employer? You may find that you can work together with a payer to market your practice to other members, and don't forget to confirm that the payer has you properly listed in their directory. 3. Assess reimbursement rates. Based on the most heavily used CPT codes for the practice, Develop a spreadsheet on payer performance. A sample payer performance table is provided in the toolbox. This will identify the variation in payments of different plans and reveal the poorer paying contracts. When the troublesome payers have been identified, assess the potential impact of eliminating any or all of these payers. Measure this impact with the following points in mind. Volume of business the payer represents. Impact on existing and potential patients. Loss of revenue and long-term economic effect. Existing scheduling needs. Perhaps eliminating a few payers will open up time on the schedule to see more patients from other better paying sources. Political issues that may exist with referring physicians. Perhaps they are considering dropping a poor payer or feel compelled to provide service to a poor payer for reasons that are unknown to you. If you decide you would like to fire some of the payers based on your findings, be sure you have confirmed that fees cannot be improved through renegotiation. Then start by dropping the worst payer and measuring the impact. Before attempting to terminate, review the existing contract to be sure the terms required for termination are not violated. Decide how to communicate your intention to drop the plan to referring physicians and patients who are members of the plan. It will be important to continue providing care for plan patients under treatment. Of course, you can offer to see patients out of network. This means you will submit claims on their behalf, but you are not willing to accept the fee schedule. The plan as presented to you. Make sure patients understand the effect this will have on their financial obligations before seeing them go. Be sure no one in the practice makes negative comments about the payer to patients or other practices. It serves no purpose and takes away from the professionalism of the practice. Even if your analysis results in a decision not to fire any existing payers, regularly examining these key indicators is a good discipline for monitoring payer performance and avoiding passivity in dealing with payers. It also puts the practice in a knowledgeable position that holds payers accountable to meet expectations. Give sufficient attention to time of service collections. More employers are cutting health insurance benefits by switching to insurance plans with higher deductibles and those that require patients to assume a bigger share of the cost. The ACA exchange plans also typically include both significant deductibles and coinsurance. This makes it incredibly important for medical practices throughout the country to focus more closely on patient collections. If the practice doesn't implement tight collection procedures, it is likely to end up with a rising accounts receivable or. Receptionists at both the receiving and exit stations should be trained in how to review a patient's billing and payment record and understand what the patient owes. Then it will be easier to hold them accountable for optimizing collecting from patients, both copays and existing patient balances. Tablet and kiosk systems that allow patients to log in themselves and make payments not only take some of the pressure off reception staff to collect, but also enhance patient privacy. Newer payment systems, such as smartphone payments, also encourage patients to comply with their payment obligations by making it easier for them. Increase accountability by using daily reports on patient payments collected at the front desk. Except for preventive services, copays are almost always required under most health plans. So reviewing these reports at the end of each day will reveal if receptionists are skilled and comfortable with collecting from every patient, every time. If they have difficulty asking for money, encourage them to observe another staffer who excels in this area. Role-playing also helps staff learn to be more comfortable with their role. We work with a 4-physician urology practice that doubled time of service collections within 30 days once staff members were retrained. The physicians, impressed as the receptionists continued to increase the amount they collected, complimented them on their progress. This was enough motivation to keep the staff confident and focused on raising the bar. Just think of how much time and money was saved by not having to send out repeated statements and reducing the amount of time staff spend following up on patient balances as they continue to age and become less collectible. Patients are far more motivated to take responsibility for paying their doctors when they still remember how much they needed them. This is why collecting both copays and an estimate of total payment responsibility, or at least a portion thereof at the time of service, is so important. If you wait too long before getting serious about asking for payment, the treatment the patients receive may be a faded memory. Give staff members clear direction on expectations and let them help you determine specific measurement of their progress. This will help them take ownership and support their success. The most effective way to achieve the target front desk collection goal is to establish graduated expectations for improvement over a specific period of time. Table 2. Table 2. Front desk collection goals. Percent of patients who paid the visit copay. 55. Average daily. Front desk payments. Front desk. Percent of patient balances. Collections. Collected. Historical performance. $1,175. 12. 30-day target. 50. 80. 60-day target. 70. 100. 90-day target. 90. 100. Monitor front desk staff collection and share the results with them daily or weekly. Continue to encourage and praise them as they progress. Some practices offer bonuses when targets are hit as an incentive to improve collections. If staff members struggle to hit the targets, provide additional support to teach them the skills necessary to obtain patient payments and overcome obstacles that prevent this. At the same time, recognize that not every employee is right for this role. Some people just can't get comfortable asking patients for money. Knowing you need to shift a valued employee into a different position to maintain morale and confidence. When the front desk has difficulty collecting from patients, the problem may be patients' poor understanding of health plan rules and terminology. As patient financial obligations continue to increase, everyone in the front office can help improve collections. Most important, schedulers can educate patients about their copay, coinsurance, and deductible terms while verifying insurance and booking the patient's appointment. Everyone who discusses payment terms with patients should remind the patients that those terms are set by the health plan, not the practice. Appointment reminders, even automated ones, can also include reminders about copayments. Accounts receivable management. Examine the /R indicators to identify red flags and know when it's time to dig deeper to correct underlying problems and get the money collected. There are a few key benchmarks that should be looked at each month. When the practice doesn't fall within the norm, start digging. In particular, you'll want to pay close attention to the total accounts receivable, the breakout of accounts receivable by patient and insurance, and the age of receivables. Benchmarks for these metrics vary a bit by specialty, but there are several useful sources for finding benchmarks to evaluate your practice. Some billing/PMS systems have started building into their reporting comparisons against their total practice population, so you and your team can compare your performance simply by running a report. Organizations like MGMA and your specialty society also do periodic surveys that produce reports that allow you to compare your/our performance against your most profitable peers. Third-party reimbursement analysis. Be sure your team is checking AOBs and using reports available in your PMS to ensure insurance plans pay your claims correctly, and that the billing department properly reviews the claims and contractual adjustments before posting them. Errors in this process can be very costly to the practice. When accounts are inappropriately adjusted off accounts because employees assume the insurance company paid the right fee for each service, the difference can be thousands, even hundreds of thousands of dollars that your practice foregoes over the course of a year. For example, we encountered one situation where the billing department was reading Medicare EOBs incorrectly and wrote off the 20% patient responsibility, amounting to $83,000 in 1 year. Give the responsibility for reviewing and verifying claims and payments the attention it deserves. Properly train employees and monitor outcomes. The EOB also reports denied payment for a service. Be sure the staff appeals these claims when warranted. If the denial is a result of coding errors, it's important to inform physicians and non-physician providers and show them how to properly code the service in the future to prevent repeat errors from cutting into practice revenue again and again. Where's the money? If the volume of a/R more than 120 days old rises above the norm for your specialty, run a report on aging by payer class. The rising a/R could indicate a troublesome payer. The administrator or billing manager can first take quick action to recover the money and prevent the aging for this payer from ballooning in the future. For example, if the out-of-norm aging is the result of claims kicked back to the practice with errors, the administrator can work with both the billing team and the physician as to correct misunderstandings about coding or documentation required by this payer. Of course, the problem could be on the payer's side, too. Claims might be backlogged with an employee at the insurance plan. The insurance plan might even have financial trouble that is causing it to stall payments. The faster you take action, the better the chance of collecting the revenue and preventing more delay or missed payments in the future. In today's insurance environment, with more patients facing significant deductibles, large patient balances often drive up the aged receivables as well. Is your practice keeping deadwood on the books? If accounts are uncollectible, the sooner they are turned over to a collection agency, the better the chance of recovery. Equally important, when accounts that have almost no chance of being collected stay on your books, they distort your vision of how much money your practice can expect to receive. Plus, unless you're monitoring patient receivables, you also risk continuing to see a patient who has no intention of ever paying his or her share of costs. To protect against these problems, your practice needs to have a clear, consistent policy for handling patient receivables and migrating them to collections and writing them off after appropriate attempts to collect. We usually recommend a policy that ends with writing off accounts and sending them to a collection agency after 3 successive monthly statements have triggered no response from the patient. Other important policies and procedures we recommend include: 1. Be sure patients are offered the choice of email statements and that an online payment option is available. Most PMSs now offer bill and payment portals. Make sure you've activated yours. The staff knows how it works. Many patients will begin making good faith payments, even if they can't pay in full, when they can do so conveniently and privately. Be sure that collecting email addresses for this purpose and asking for the patient's preference and receiving statements is part of the registration process. 2. Review the statement format. Is it clear and easy to understand? Can it be improved to encourage payment? Consider adding a primer to your website that explains the difference between copay, coinsurance, and deductible obligations. Also review the done messages on past due statements and experiment with different versions to see if a better response can be triggered. 3. Telephone patients for payment when a second statement does not result in payment. Phone calls may be more effective than statements for some patients. Be sure staff understands the HIPAA implications of leaving messages on voicemail and set boundaries for the number of calls to be completed to ensure costs incurred are not out of line with collection potential. 4. Consider a pre-collection letter writing service, such as TSI, Transworld Systems, Inc., to boost patient collections. This will speed up the process and reduce the time staff spends chasing the money. Sometimes, the patient will respond better to a third party taking the demand for payment more seriously, resulting in prompt resolution of the debt. 5. Remember that preventing bad debt is preferable to trying to cure it. Recent changes to credit scoring mean that medical debt will have much less impact on patient credit ratings. This may mean that even the possibility of a write-off in collection will not persuade some patients to pay. Collecting at the time of service and using technology like credit card on file, payment plans, tablets and kiosks, and email statements linked to a payment portal are all excellent tools to enable your practice to reduce the likelihood of a patient account ever going south. Collecting from patients is one of the most challenging responsibilities in the office, and sometimes the staff needs a little motivation. Setting collection target goals and offering incentives to collectors may improve the practice's performance in this area. Payment estimation and real-time claims adjudication. Most of us on the business side of medicine have been frustrated by the challenges of understanding patients' insurance coverage and their personal responsibility for the visit. How many times have you thought, when I go to a retail store, they scan my credit card when the transaction occurs and immediately know whether they will get paid? Why can't we do that in a medical facility? Some payers, clearinghouses, and other payment system vendors have tried to address this problem with real-time claims adjudication or TCA. For example, some payers offer tools for this purpose on their portals. While reaching true RTCA is a worthy goal for our industry for the future, the path to achieving it is still long, and it's not clear how some obstacles will need to be surmounted. For example, processing a claim in real time, while the patient is present in the office, requires coding and finalizing the claim at that time. Many physicians find this a daunting idea, preferring to take a bit more time to be sure that charges are fully captured. When patients have secondary coverage, that introduces another wrinkle. And of course, the systems to perform RTCA still have a ways to go. Vendors have focused on most commonly used codes as a start, but that may mean that the claims you most like to process in real time can't be done that way. In the interim, Many clearinghouses and technology vendors have started offering a solution called patient payment estimation. These helpful tools allow a staff member to quickly estimate what patients will owe based on projected codes, their health plan terms, and their deductible fulfillment status. Estimation with these tools, along with using RTCA where appropriate, can allow your practice staff to collect from patients at the time of service much more confidently. Valid estimates, created with a system that connects to patients' health plans, are necessary tools to persuade patients to set up payment plans for high-cost procedures. Combining these tools with credit card on file technology managed through your PMS or connected check-in tablet/kiosk system is a big step toward ensuring your patients will meet their financial obligations. RTCA, patient payment estimators, and other tools yet to be developed continue to evolve. As they do, our industry continues its progress toward clearer communication about finances and patients' responsibility for the services that are rendered, which will result in better patient service and payment compliance, and more predictable revenue for practices. Whose practice is IT, anyway? Beginning with contracting and ending with collections and making sure the payments get to the bank, every step along the way influences how you be paid for what you do and how well practice finances are protected. Physicians need to assume responsibility for these decisions and take back the control of practice finances. Sometimes that means learning to say no. When you aren't satisfied, do something about it. If it's a payer problem, go back to the drawing board to negotiate and agree on revised contract terms. If the situation warrants it, fire the payer. If it's a staff training or performance issue, address it. Give staff members the tools to do their job and hold them accountable. Don't be a target for embezzlement. Most physicians and administrators know someone who has been a victim of a scam to embezzle from a medical practice. Embezzlement is an orchestrated illegal plan to court you from your money without your knowledge. Oftentimes, clever embezzlers lure their victims into a false sense of security and complacency, gain trust, and then test the waters. If they get away with it, their confidence grows and they continue to scam. Victims of embezzlement schemes can end up unwittingly financing someone else's vacation home or kids' college education. But there are steps you can take to make it more difficult for would-be thieves to succeed. Above all, being observant and aware of unusual employee behaviors is essential. Take financial notice. Practices are sometimes casual about the handling of cash, and this can encourage dishonest employees to try their hand at stealing. For example, in our consulting work, we've encountered practices with cash loosely kept in drawers and not reconciled to practice records before it hits the bank deposit. Bank statements viewed only by the office bookkeeper. Manual processing that could be more securely done electronically. No policy or oversight for adjustments on patient accounts, and payroll records not reviewed carefully before approval. On the physician's part, this casual response to handling finances may be neglect or perhaps too much trust. Either way, it provides opportunity for employees who are inclined to embezzle. Embezzlement can occur almost anywhere in the office. It can be at the front desk, in the insurance department, in payroll, or in accounts payable. It may start small, with the perpetrator borrowing $20 from the cash drawer for lunch, but if it doesn't get repaid and goes unnoticed, the employee may feel emboldened to steal more. Who's handling your money? Efficiency of a medical office depends on streamlining procedures and avoiding duplication of tasks. Every time a staff member touches a financial account or instrument could be an opportunity for embezzlement. Eliminating or minimizing check handling, relying on EFT for reimbursement and online bill pay for payables eliminates several opportunities for embezzlement. Separating duties so that reconciliations are done by a different person than the one writing checks or making deposits can be helpful if it makes it harder for a would-be embezzler to act, or more likely the embezzler will be caught. Requiring anyone handling finances to rotate out of the position for a period of at least 2 consecutive weeks each year is another time-tested approach banks use to spot embezzlement while the employee is away. If an employee has something to hide, that person will likely resist this policy. This discourages the thief, but it's not foolproof. Clever employees can sometimes find ways to outsmart the system or clean up their act during the weeks preceding their time off. They are deceptive and will do what it takes to avoid discovery. Beyond having multiple people involved in financial transactions, it is equally important to have processes that ensure clear and appropriate documentation to support all financial transactions, money in and money out. Systems such as your PMS may offer tools that automate the creation of audit trails, such as uniquely numbered receipts for patient payments that are added to the patient's record. Make sure staff is using systems properly and that logs and other components of the audit trail can't be accessed by employees who don't specifically need that information. Work with your PMS and EHR vendor to understand what protections against medical records theft and identity theft are built into their software and how to use them. Administrators and physicians also need to make periodic financial reviews and audits a priority. In addition to these ideas, here are 12 more that can help protect practice finances. 1. Use online banking for payments or an automated check writing system that prints checks and leaves no room for alteration. 2. Have a bank lockbox for receiving all mail and payments on patient accounts. Set up a payment portal and electronic statements to encourage more patients to pay online and to reduce the need to handle checks. Make sure all payers reimburse via EFT. 3. Audit the cash drawer daily. Minimize cash and consider eliminating it altogether in favor of credit card or check payments only at the front desk. 4. Never borrow from the cash box or others will. 5. Do not use signature stamps with the same names as the signers on bank accounts. 6. Have bank statements come to the home of one of the physicians and have someone who neither writes checks nor makes bank deposits complete the reconciliation. 7. If a non-owner of the practice is permitted to be a signer on the bank account, limit the dollar amount approved. Use credit cards or house accounts if staff need to make purchases. And make sure that a physician owner receives and reviews the monthly statements. 8. Audit payroll records semi-annually for unauthorized raises, bonuses, or overtime pay. 9. Conduct reference and background checks on all potential employees before you hire them. 10. Purchase insurance bonds on employees who handle money. But keep in mind this does not cover neglect. 11. Spot check financial transactions and records, including adjustments on patient accounts. Review all refunds, including credit card reversals or credits. Look for anomalies in your reports, such as large unapplied payments. 12. Listen to your instincts. If you become suspicious, start digging. The last point is especially important. New techniques for embezzling are invented all the time. Prevention may not be possible. Spotting a thief may be more effective. Watch for unusual behaviors, such as sudden spending sprees, admissions of financial stress, or territoriality about systems or procedures. Clearly establish strong financial policies for the practice and adhere to them. Existing employees will appreciate a solid foundation and a clear understanding of how things need to be done. New hires will recognize the practice's respect for finances and know what is expected of them. They will understand this practice minds the store. Communicate consequences. As a final note, during each employee's orientation, discuss the financial principles of the practice and let the new employee know you will not tolerate deceit, fraud, or theft. Too many practices leave financial matters unspoken, and too many physicians who have been the victim of embezzlement fail to prosecute. Let your staff know you would. Remember, too, that you're not responsible only for protecting your own finances. Theft of patient information is another white-collar crime that occurs in medical practices and is on the rise. Vigilance and good policies help protect your patient's financial well-being, too. Be sure that your insurance policies are also up to date in case you are unable to prevent a breach in spite of your best efforts. The secrets: 1. Getting paid for what you do begins with contracting. 2. Scrutinize contracts and make your own contracting decisions. 3. Conduct internal chart audits. 4. Look at E&M coding patterns. 5. Monitor billing trends, from the completion of charges by physicians and non-physician providers through the payment of balances by health plans and patients. 6. Audit contract payments and adjustments for accuracy. 7. Know when to terminate a payer. 8. Establish standards for managing revenue processes. 9. Patients have more financial responsibility than in the past, and it's likely they will continue to assume more financial responsibility in the future. 10. Strengthen procedures and controls for patient financial responsibility, including mastering collections and appointment scheduling and time of service.